Hello. Okay. Attention, please. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take a seat. Our conference will resume. I think everyone have a very excited night. We have the gala dinner last night, and we have seen, we have talked the beautiful garden and meet the interesting people. Today is still the second day of our conference. There are many items to cover. Firstly, we'll have to move the session 5, broadening the impact of Earth observation and GEO. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back to this very hall, and let's get into the activities. First of all, we'll have a review of the work of yesterday. Can you show on the screen what we have done yesterday? Okay. There are 3 sessions regarding the engagement priority actions were featured yesterday. Each session was chaired by an excellent facilitator with the great support of colleagues from GEO Secretariat, in which an external speaker also was invited to address points raised by associated discussion papers. Then the GEO Plenary delegates were invited to express their views. And a GEO representative also provided the perspective on the actions to deliver. In the end, the facilitator provided outcomes which will help drive actions through the coming years. These valuable outcomes will be made available as part of the plenary proceedings in the afternoon. For this session, we are focusing on encouraging multi-parties engagement in order to broaden the impact of Earth observation and GEO. It is important to cooperate with global key multilateral economic forums, which will help the impact be delivered as broadly as possible. Moreover, downscaling the GEO strategies and result to regional, national, and even local scale also is a better approach to ensure that more people benefit from GEO. So we will invite several guest speakers to make presentations to address the thoughts and actions to realize these approaches, which will give us some great inspiration and intervention. Delegates will also be welcomed. Firstly, welcome Mr. Nicholas Davis from World Economic Forum, who is the director of SWIFT Partners, and he will give us some successful cooperation examples between GEO and the Multilateral Economic Forum, and highlight what we can do to achieve a better collaboration in the future. Please welcome Mr. Nicholas Davis.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair, distinguished guests. It's a great privilege to be here with you this morning, and I'll just pause while the slides come up. Perfect. So in the short time that I have in front of you, I wanted to just make a few comments about some incredibly important links between emerging technology, between partnerships, and the idea of broad economic impact. Now, my background is having been based with the World Economic Forum in Geneva for the past 13 years, working on this concept of the fourth industrial revolution. I co-authored a number of books on this topic, particularly with my former boss, Executive Chairman Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. And the framing of the fourth industrial revolution that we and the World Economic Forum has been focused on is not one that just says cool, sexy technologies are exciting and we should all invest in them and pay attention to what they could do. It says we need to build collective public good systems that allow technology to be used for the collective good, for sustainable development, and to benefit as many communities as possible. And so when I look at the work of GEO, when I look at its flagships, its initiatives, its community activities, I can very honestly say that this is one of the few organisations that's doing both of those things. It's bringing the combination, the intersection of the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution together in very tangible applications that benefit people. And it's doing so in ways that are very broad-based, that are able to be leveraged by a huge array of actors. And this will be obvious to anyone that's looked through the 2020 to 2022 work program of GEO and seen the alignment of the flagships and initiatives against the Paris goals, Paris Agreement, against the SDGs and Sendai, etc. But I also wanted to mention that this is not just abstract benefit that can be gained out of this. Thanks to the World Economic Forum's partnership with GEO around the community activity of Digital Earth Africa, we spent some time estimating the potential economic value add for the region that could flow out of, let me be clear, just one small activity that comes through the GEO network, which is Digital Earth Africa. So by creating an open source public good, which presents analysis-ready Earth observation data to a wide variety of actors, it can, for instance, have a huge impact on excluding illegal mining activities. Here's a picture of an assessment of illegal mining activities in Ghana, but these almost plug-and-play tools based on the fantastic availability of data such as the Landsat and Sentinel networks allows these applications to be put into place at huge benefit to the continent. But that's not all. That's the impact that you can have when you realise the benefits of application. There is also a huge market impact here. And by market impact, I mean the Earth observation impact market itself. And we at the World Economic Forum find our members and partners in the private sector hugely excited about geospatial activities. And their view is GEO's investment in public infrastructure, in data, in programs that bring together different organisations' skills and abilities increases the market and the availability for new activity in that private sector activity as well. So another $500 million just in Africa alone, in the continent, is added to the market by creating these public goods. So how do you create these public goods? What is the secret sauce here? Well, I would argue this comes back to what the chair said at the beginning. This is about partnerships and activities whereby we're able to particularly bring diverse communities together and apply them to deliver, to amplify and sustain this work. You may have seen this slide before. I've stolen this from good colleague Stephen Ramage and Aditya Agrawal, who are in the audience today. But I want to really stress this idea that it's not the business as usual partnerships that get things done. It's looking for those new sources of value at the edges of communities and networks that get you closer to the problem and unlock resources and bottlenecks that matter. And that's been the experience of the World Economic Forum, working with GEO, working with other partners. The most interesting engagements that we have found have been at the very edges. It's been a farmers collective in Kenya that's incredibly interested in looking to make the application of the data cube, an Australian invention, an open source code base, to their specific needs in East Africa, that is driving some fascinating conversations about realising those big headline benefits in the hundreds of $millions that I put up before. So I just want to finish then with a call to say the numbers are big, the prize is huge, the pathway is activities like today that spur new partnerships. The pathway is activities like joining in the high-level working group that UN Environment is running here as a side event, focused on bringing different actors together and crowding in innovation and investment in new and very tangible and applicable ways. And I've moved on from the World Economic Forum just recently, but I know that my colleagues and Professor Schwab and others are tremendously excited about the fact that two very different organisations can work together, can share resources and networks, and just start at the very edges to see the value of Earth observations as a global public digital good. So thank you very much, everyone.
It's very impressive. GEO data is the glue for the new generation of industry. Yesterday, we have the word, we have seen, listened to at the GEO Special Revolution. Today, we will focus on how GEO can support industry revolution. So, are there any questions or comments on this presentation from the floor?
This is your only chance to challenge me on the numbers, by the way.
Okay,
any economists or statisticians out there?
Yeah, give the chance to the representative of Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Nick. I'll pay you later. What Nick highlighted was the incredible benefits that and gave examples of what could happen in Africa with this in terms of economic development. But in Australia, we're also really interested in the economic benefits of Earth observation across our economy and other economies as well. This morning, our Minister Andrews launched an important study that looked at the impact of Earth observations across the APEC economies. And the numbers are truly staggering when you look at it. I think the figures are in the order of the current value just to the APEC economies of the application of Earth observations is in the order of $375 billion. Billion, not million, billion. And that is expected to grow by 2030 to $1.45 trillion. Right? So this is enormous, and to put that into context, if I can share the Australian figures, in Australia those numbers are that today's value is 20 billion, and that is set to grow to 66 billion by 2030. Now, just for context, those numbers by themselves don't sound real, but to put it into context, 66 billion is the same size as our entire agriculture industry in Australia. So what it's saying is that Earth observations, through impacting many different sectors of the economy, will be as valuable to the Australian economy as agriculture is today within 10 years. So this is big, right? So we are dealing with enormous opportunities, and we in the GEO community are poised to enable that if we continue our work. So it's important that we continue focusing on integration of Earth observation into all sectors of the economy through digital economy opportunities, things like agricultural technologies, insurance, financial technologies, and making sure that Earth observations are not stovepipe but available alongside other types of big data like financial, social and economic information. It's also really important that we keep highlighting the central role that Earth observations can play in achieving multilateral economic cooperation priorities and driving inclusive and sustained economic growth. Our politicians really care about their economies, right? We have a really strong and important story to tell about that. Let's tell it and let's tell it with a loud voice. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. And I have noticed the representative from Finland, please.
Thank you very much. It's a question in the sense of, I'm also going to be the Vice President of the Sustaining Arctic Observing Networks initiative, and we have been there for a few years building a value tree for Arctic observing systems, because it's so imminent that Earth observation is giving a good value, but it actually is not a very straightforward, simple value chain. There are many different actions, and especially in situ networks, so stations here and there, and research organizations, so many different actors who are doing these, and not all of this value actually supports then the components it's actually needing. Have you been looking at this kind of a value tree thing where we could more also show where does all that value depend on, so that we would actually support all the things that we need?
Yeah, I'll make just two comments to that. One is, in the analysis that we've done, we see a significant portion of some of the value capture, or at least its regained value from the use of Earth observation data, is in areas such as tax revenue, fiscal revenue. So one of the ways of looking at this is how can the Earth's observation data, particularly when used through the public sector side of things, compensate for losses that are existing in the system. And that tends to often be left out of the analysis of the value here, at least what we see. The second aspect is there is a challenge in the increasing privatization of the applications and some of the data in this sector, which is why it's so gratifying to see efforts such as the data cube or China's announcement around opening up data yesterday to make sure that the raw materials here are as widely available as possible. Certainly our experience has been that capacity building at the community level and entrepreneurial activity is one way of creating a more competitive and diversified market, so that those ideas and that value gets broadly spread and is not captured by organizations offshore outside a country or fragmented into other uses. But this is still a maturing area and deserves further study, and the World Economic Forum would certainly be interested, maybe with Finland's help, to delve deeper into these questions.
Okay, thank you. There is more request from United States, please.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. We would like to say the value of observations, Earth observations, is grounded in their use to produce many different and positive societal outcomes. Understanding and quantifying these outcomes is critical to EO planning, prioritization, and product development. But its use is much broader than might be applied for supporting the budget development process for governments and other agencies. Because much of the data and information coming from Earth observations are a public good, markets do not yet exist, as was mentioned by our speaker, to easily determine the value to specific users and societies as a whole. The value or worth of information depends on many things, including, as we talked about, the ability to use the information to make better decisions, regardless of the precise accuracy or timeliness of the data. Information has no value if there's no way for people to act on it. The perceptions of the users are equally important. Do they trust the information enough and have the ability to act upon the information in the right time frame? And the potential economic and societal gain or loss resulting from a good or bad decision is difficult but essential for us to quantify. So as Nick Davis has pointed out, while the quantification of Earth observation benefits to society is extremely challenging, we have seen the major economic dividends provided by radio data in both our national and our global society and economies. Just a couple of examples. A 2019 study by the U.S. Geological Survey found that at a minimum, the annual benefits from Landsat data and satellite imagery to be about $2 billion in the United States, and another $3.5 billion to the global economy overall. Much of this value stems from the free and open data policy, Digital Earth Africa being an example, using primarily Landsat data historically, which allows users to access as much imagery as necessary for their analysis and at no cost. Compare these relatively small numbers of 2 and 3 billion with the hundreds of billions of dollars just identified by Australia with the APEC analysis. The Earth observations, another example, the Earth observations collected from NOAA and from our global weather satellite agencies around the world provide the full range of weather information together with ocean conditions for forecast information and services. Such information is essential because of the people, businesses, academia, and governments who use it regularly in their daily and annual decision-making process. So understanding the impacts goes well beyond the economic and dollar value we might get from that, and our challenge is to understand both those, the dollar and the societal benefit economic impacts that come from this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, United States. There is also the calling from the Netherlands, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. Also, the former speakers were speaking about the value of all the data that could be for societal benefit and economic values. The numbers are very impressive, but what would be your advice to this community, in fact, to valorize the data that is there? What kind of activities should be taken to bring this data into a market and to develop a market? Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. I think there are two aspects here. One is working closely with the application providers, whether they are groups like Geoscience Australia here in Australia, who creates with their partners here sets of applications that can be directly used in conjunction to solve challenges that farmers have or different land users have in the agricultural space. By being close to the applications themselves and supporting those sets of applications, you get a sense of the quantification, but you also then understand when more investment needs to be. And often in the case of open data policy, the first couple of releases of open data are incredibly useful, but they're useful to sophisticated users only. And so the more that you can learn about the type of, the frequency, the quality, the standards of that data flowing through to that middle layer of application developers, the better that link between public investment and broad-based economic gain will be. The second set of investments is in community capacity building and awareness, really down at the lowest levels, as close to those people that need to benefit as possible. And that's why, through discussions in Digital Earth Africa and others, we're really focusing on community users such as farmers' cooperatives. Because unless we understand how a public official in the city of Accra or a local set of farmers might gain from that analysis-ready data or that even awareness of that application, we won't understand whether or if that value ever materializes. So the act of supporting the flow-through of the infrastructure and the act of supporting the capacity building itself, and this goes back to the United States comments, those activities themselves reveal the value at different points in time. They reveal the bottlenecks, and they enable that to be brought into the broader conversation about why and whether this is truly valuable. So I think capacity building and application focus are the two biggest ones, and I would say they're more important than the top-down engineering perspective in many cases. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much for your comments and the interventions. We are moving from the traditional physical world into the twin world. It means digital and physical together. With all the process information, we can make the world much better. So there is another intervention from Switzerland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for this presentation. What has been said from my colleagues, we would agree. We consider that in order to have a complete assessment of the socio-economic impact of Earth observation, we just want to ask if GEO should promote the availability of socio-economic data in the future. What do you think about this, and is it possible?
can refer that question back to the GEO Secretariat, I think.
Yeah?
But yes, it sounds like a very good idea.
Okay, you can tell some thinking.
Okay. Thank you, Switzerland. In an ideal world, yes, that's what we have to do. So if you allow me the two pieces of the puzzle which are missing, one piece is socioeconomic data, and the other piece which is missing currently in GEO is impact assessments. And whether impact assessments for me, I would argue, Switzerland, that have a higher priority because this is what decision makers need. So if I had to put effort in something, I would say we need to engage more of the community that does impact assessment, using Earth observation not as the result itself, but as the starting point for the current situation of the system, and then projecting scenarios for the systems in the future. Of course, you cannot do impact assessment without in situ and without socioeconomic data, but that restricts a little bit. So if we look for impact, and if we consider that impact assessment is the missing piece currently in GEO, if we want to reach decision making, we would then be able to say what are the socioeconomic data we need to provide impact assessments. I would rather go this way, saying what do we need to make decision makers decide, and then look at which data from Earth observations in situ and socioeconomic underpins these assessments. So then I am issuing a call, an open call for contributions by the community. We need to include impact assessment studies in the GEO work program, and we welcome contributions by the member states and the POs to make some of this work which exists out there, use more Earth observations, and be part of work program. To be quite honest, this is a big missing piece in our work program. Please help us produce impact assessments because these are needed if we want to reach out to decision makers.
Thank you, Mr. Kamala, for the comments about the integration and the practice encouraged in different countries. Are there any more interventions? If no, we thank our presenter, Nicholas David. Now we move to the 5.3 item, regional impact about our 4 regional bodies. They will be invited to introduce the accomplishment of regional GEOs in 2016-2019, and they will help us find out how to leverage regional GEO better in the future. So I would like to give the floor to our 4 co-chairs of the regional GEO. As Ms. Fob Odo from African. Ms. Angelica Gutierrez from America GEO, Mr. Gu Xingfa from AO GEO, and Mr. Gillis Ollier from Euro GEO. These 4 co-chairs, welcome to the stage together. A representative, okay. Okay, the first one will give the floor to Ms. Phoebe Odo from GEO, please.
I want to present on the regional impact we have received from Africa. And I'll be talking about the crop monitors and how they've been used in Africa. So these particular crop monitors, we've received them through GEO grant program, which is agricultural monitoring initiative by GEO. So basically, these crop monitors are early warning tools that are being used by governments to be able to understand how the crops are performing. They're disseminated on a monthly basis and are developed by multiple stakeholders. So we have FuseNet that provides food security assessment. We have ECPAC that provides climate assessments. We have the SAVER program through the Eastern Africa region that is able to give in inputs on Earth observation and how that can be integrated in the crop monitors. And we also have the line ministries that provide the perspective and inputs on in situ data and also information on pests. So through these different stakeholders, we're able to make assessments on crop conditions. How is the vegetation growth performing? How is rainfall situation and soil moisture? And based on this, give early warning to the government on what to expect. It started as a continental product, but it's been downscaled to regional products for the Horn of Africa and also to national products. So far we've gotten requests from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda for this very useful tool. And basically, the assessment monitor different crops because the different governments have specific interest in different crops. Where I come from, for instance, in Kenya, our main interest is to follow up maize. Maize is a very good indicator for us to know whether we are food secure or not. And it's very interesting because in Kenya, we could have every other crop available, but when there's shortage of maize, it's a national crisis. In terms of uses, we have seen several uses, one being disaster response, because we get to understand how the performance is going to be early enough, and in that regard, governments are able to prepare whether there's going to be shortage or if there's going to be a bust. And this consequently affects the market price and basically the market price for the entire region. And also gives the insurance company an indicator of what is going to happen. So every time we have crop failure, they know the risk is very high. It also triggers the warehouse because when there's bump harvests, they need to be prepared to know what to do with the extra, whether to trade or to store. And the information gotten in situ also gets to provide information on what pests are available at that particular time and what can be done. We have a very good case study that has been applied in Uganda where they were able to trigger the disaster risk fund because there was crop failure at that particular time. And this particular tool has really helped to mitigate loss and damage. And we anticipate to see more countries coming on board and making these particular requests. And basically what happens, especially at national level, is you're able to apply much more national data and downscale it to a level that makes sense to the country, monitor specifically what you want. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Phoebe. Next, I will ask Ms. Angelica. Okay, you have the floor, please.
Good morning, and thank you to the plenary for the space that are giving us to the regionals. The most significant impact of GEO is reflected in the evolution that we see in our community on the inclusion of Earth observations in their decision and in the effort of our GEO members to implement open data policies in their national agendas. This has been achieved through meaningful partnerships with governments and organizations at the international and local level. This year, we welcome El Salvador and Guatemala as our new GEO new country members, and to Red Clara, our new participant organization in GEO. We are also strengthening the partnerships with organizations like NASA Servier and other organizations in the region. I was talking about open data policies implementations. In 2017, when we started the AmeriGeo platform, we had open data of 7 country members. Today, there is 19 national efforts with open data portals in our region. This information is now connected to the AmeriGeo's platform. We are also achieving this evolution through capacity building, not only in the instruction of Earth observation, but also in providing infrastructure so that Earth observations can be provided to our region. And this is the case of GeoNetcast. In 2014, when AmeriGeo was created, we had about 20 stations in the ground of GeoNetcast. Today, we have 89 stations and antennas in our region, providing vital information to hydromet services and other organizations in the countries. Finally, through knowledge transfer and technical development. Since 2015, we implemented AmeriGeo Week, a space where collaborations and learning is happening in our region. AmeriGeo Week targets government organizations, not academic, but government organizations that come to receive instructions in the use of Earth observations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angelica. Now next, Xingfa, you have the floor, please.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great pleasure to introduce you the recent activities of AOGO. On behalf of the 4 co-chairs from China, Australia, Korea, and Japan. The past year is a really busy year for AOGO. So please pass the next slide, please. Next. Sorry, here. Sorry. We have 2 new country members, which are Indonesia and New Zealand, to join the AOGO. And we have created a new task group for disaster readiness. And we have a really close communication with our caucus, because now the regional GEOs are moved into regional GEO. So we are a lot of thinking about how to realize this evolution. So we realized that we need not only to do many scientific and technical works, but we need to also do some coordinations and co-reproductions. In the past year, we continue our annual workshop and symposium. And now we have more than 19 young scientists from 14 regional countries has benefits from financial support to the training program. The recent successfully organized AO-GEO symposium held in Australia just before the plenary have received a big success. About 200 scientists and decision makers, not only from our AO region, but from the rest of the world, have participated actively in the discussion of AO-GEO. And inside this AO-GEO symposium, we have created our first fellowship in AO, and maybe the first fellow in EO in recognition of the excellent contribution of the Professor Toshio Koiga for his outstanding contribution to GEO and AO-GEO. One of the recent innovative work of AO-GEO is to set up 3 integrated priority study area to respond to the core design, core development, and core production concept. So this area are the Himalaya high mountain at the top, and in the middle, the Lao Basin River, the Mekong River Basin area, and the small islands. Recently, we have a deep analysis about the regional needs of these 3 priority study area, and we have collected and set online all the data from the regional space agencies and from the International Space Agency, from Landsat, from Gaofen, from Sentinel, and from Compass. So all the data are available for everybody for the pilot study. For the past year, we have made big efforts to the inter-regional cooperation. Today, just before yesterday, we have successfully organized a key side event about the climate change, jointly organized by EuroGEO and AO-GEO, and we discussed the importance of the Earth observation value to the climate change, and how to adapt the climate change, and how to cooperate together. For the next February GEO Data and Knowledge Week, we just decided before the plenary meeting today that our 2 GEO will prepare the roadmap for the further cooperation between the 2 regions, and every GEO and FGEO will be invited to join us to discuss how to enhance the regional GEO in response to the 3 priority acts of the GEO and to the 8 SBA. So we are moving from the GEOs to GEO, and we realize that the regional GEO can make a big contribution to the establishment of the global GEOs and to the sustainable development of the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gu. Now we invite Mr. Audier from GEO, the Europe, please.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to provide an update on EuroGEO. I will give 1 slide of introduction, and but I don't know how to move it. How should I move the... yeah. So this is the slide of introduction. I don't know. It doesn't work. No, too fast. Okay, yes, 1 slide of introduction and 2 minutes video. So EuroGEO was launched in 2017
following the incentive of GEO to move on to user-oriented GEOs. This launching of EuroGeo has boosted the cooperation in Europe between a large number of organizations to deliver products, services, and knowledge. And those products, services, and knowledge are demonstrated this week during this week. And you can see them on the booth of the European Commission, but also inside events. In fact, what's happening is that in Europe, we have been following a strong policy on data sharing, data opening, and now we are moving with those products and services on opening the access to those data and services. So for long in GEO, we have been working on the data, a data-centered approach, but now the products and the services that are developed through GEO are becoming available. And they can be reused, they can be adapted to other circumstances. So I would like to show you the one example of those services, which is in the domain of the estimation of the forest fire damages.
Fire risk depends on many factors, including climatic conditions, vegetation type and amount, forest management practices, and other socio-economic factors. Climate change projections suggest substantial warming and increases in the number of droughts, heat waves, and dry spells, especially in the Mediterranean region. Italy's forest estate is one of the largest in Europe. Preserving and enhancing forests is also important for society and economy. For this reason, local authorities are deeply committed to forest preservation and fire risk prevention. On the 24th of September 2018, a large fire devastated the forests in the mountains north of Pisa. The mayor of Calci, the closest city to the fire, highlighted that it was difficult to estimate the extent of the fire, but that it was surely a huge portion of the forest on Mount Serra. Earth observation helps monitoring the extent of burnt areas. The geodesm model classifies land cover and land cover change. Geodesm runs through the virtual laboratory VLab, which uses European cloud platforms, including the Copernicus Diocese and the European Open Science Cloud. By using geodesm within the VLab, the extent of significant change near Pisa was mapped from Sentinel-2 images acquired before and after the fire. VLab enables other scientific models too, in particular Trends.Earth model, which calculates the UN SDG indicator on land degradation. EuroGeo enabled the connection among the presented European capacities for forest fire and land degradation assessment.
So the main point here is the collaboration in Europe that enabled to deliver this kind of product. Because until recently, we have been facing the situation that individual organizations were delivering products. But now our organizations are collaborating together, bringing together the existing resources. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Odier. Now there are 4 representatives from our GEO community. They have tell us what I have done and what the region going to do. So now I open the floor to all our delegates. So I have seen from Japan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for interesting input from each regional GEO. Based on Japan's hands-on experience of having organized the regional symposium for more than 10 years and having contributed in fostering the regional community, I would like to emphasize that the regional cooperation is an effective format to generate concrete results. In the Asia-Oceania region, the regional observation data acquisition and their use has increased, and the capacity of capacity have been developed through this cooperation. Consequently, Japan has some important lessons learned that regional cooperation is the key to solving regional issues, and these regional activities could eventually lead to solving global issues. I believe that the global and regional activities should aim at cultivating partnerships to increase synergistic effect. For example, let me introduce Sentinel Asia. As Tiziana-san from UNSCAP had mentioned yesterday in session 3, Asia and the Pacific is the most disaster-prone region in the world. Nearly 45% of the world's natural disasters occur in this region. To protect people's lives and property by using space technology, Sentinel Asia was established. It is an important international cooperation platform in which space agencies, data analysts, support agencies, international organizations, and disaster management organizations collaborate to support disaster management activities in the Asia-Pacific region. Since its establishment in 2006, Sentinel Asia has supported emergency responses to natural disasters in Asia-Pacific region. As the Executive Secretariat of Sentinel Asia, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, has been leading, together with the Asian Disaster Reduction Center of Japan. For more than a decade, JAXA has contributed to providing satellite images from AEROS and AEROS-2 satellite in response to more than 600 requests from 76 countries and regions. Recently, Sentinel Asia members have been jointly addressing not only the emergency response phase, but also the mitigation, preparedness, and recovery phases of the disaster management cycle. As my conclusion, I'd like to highlight the importance of the regional partnership and collaboration among various expertise bodies for solving regional challenges and delivering the solution to those who need it most. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Japan. Now I give the floor to Tonga.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to address the 16th plenary meeting as the newest member state of GEO. The Kingdom of Tonga sincerely appreciates the warm welcome from the Executive, Secretariat, and members of GEO. Chairman, please indulge me to share with the plenary Tonga's journey to becoming a member of GEO to demonstrate how GEO may be able to reach out to developing nations. Last year in Beijing, China, the Kingdom of Tonga attended the United Nations World Geospatial Information Congress hosted by China's Ministry of Natural Resources and the United Nations. I was honored to participate as a co-panelist with Dr. Virginia Burkett of the US Geological Survey in a plenary session on geospatial information's contribution to the SDGs. She then spent some time introducing GEO to the Tongan delegation and had followed up on our return home following the Congress. Geoscience Australia, with special acknowledgement to Dr. Stuart Minchin, then took up the cause, and through the Tonga High Commission in Canberra and the GEO Secretariat in Geneva, it became an executive ambition to see Tonga join membership. Chairman, I can assure you this was not a personal, self-interested ambition. I am the current chairperson of the Pacific Geospatial and Survey Council, the official regional entity of professionals and experts. The council is guided by its recently launched 10-year strategic plan. Also present here today is the council's vice chairperson, Ms. Maisie Hicks from the Republic of Fiji. We are two, I'd like to think, young female professionals taking the lead in this fora, and this demonstrates the regional commitment to gender equity. We are both also members of the UNGGIM Asia Pacific Executive Board, who met here earlier this week. Later this month, the Pacific's annual conference on remote sensing will be held in Fiji. Therefore, the outcomes of the week's plenary meeting and ministerial declaration will be shared widely amongst our colleagues at that conference. In addition to the regional architecture for Pacific regionalism and cooperation, the outcome statement from this week's GEO Pacific Island Program and Talanoa, as well as the announcement yesterday of the new multi-partner project on a needs analysis of Earth observations for the Pacific region are timely interventions and sets a strong foundation for the Pacific region's engagement in the geospace. I wish to acknowledge the Secretariat of the Pacific Community and the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program for their leadership this week. SPC and SPREP will be making interventions this afternoon with further details of this initiative. Chairman, I wish to end by assuring you that the Kingdom of Tonga is committed to advocating further for the genuine engagement and participation of the Pacific region in the GEO family. Malo apito, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Now I give the floor to the delegation from USA.
Thank you, Chair. We applaud the development of the geo-regional initiatives because regional approaches work. And we suggest that the geo-regional initiatives create a network to share and transfer knowledge and lessons learned. This is based on our experience with the Surveyor program over the past 15 years. Surveyor, a joint initiative from NASA and the U.S. Agency for International Development, connects satellite data for environmental decisions with developing countries. I'm Dan Irwin, the NASA director and co-founder of Surveyor. Today we work with over 46 countries through 5 regional hubs, all staffed by local employees. Our mission is the use of Earth observations to connect space to village and ultimately village to space. Surveyor is active in Eastern and Southern Africa and West Africa. Both are in AfriGeo. We're active in the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, and Lower Mekong, both in AOGeo, and we're active in Amazonia in AmeriGeo. The hubs are part of established technical organizations with multinational regional mandates. Here's a few examples about sharing across our hubs regions at both regional and national and subnational scales. We all know that drought is a global agricultural threat. The Surveyor Mekong Hub set out to increase access to drought forecasts. The hubs developed a drought information service across multiple scales in coordination with regional and national partners. They also engaged directly with the local authorities in Vietnam's Ninh Thuan province to better understand how this information can be used to improve hydromet services and agricultural planning efforts. Then they shared it, the platform, the code, the experience, and the lessons learned. They shared it with the Surveyor Hub in the Hindu Kush Himalaya, and the Mekong Hub and Ninh Thuan analysts presented their experience at a regional drought forum at the Himalaya Surveyor Hub, and their methodologies directly influenced the Himalaya Drought Information Service. As another example, the Surveyor West Africa Hub created a water mapping service. It serves remote pastoral communities by linking information gleaned from satellites on water held in small ponds. Now Surveyor East Africa has a similar effort underway. Cross-hub collaboration effectively transitions Earth observations to more countries in AfriGeo. And I've seen this happen so many times. Regional hubs in developing countries learning from one another. Our cross-hub activities are prime examples that regional geos should replicate as we explore effective ways to transition the beneficial uses of Earth observations. We encourage the regional geo activities to consider organizing cross-regional meetings and exchanges to transfer knowledge and lessons learned, as we've been doing through the Surveyor program for many years. Today, I invite you to speak with representatives from Surveyor to learn from their experience how regions helping regions and working together as a global network helps better fulfill GEO's mission. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Yeah, the next we will invite the delegation from Sadar.
Okay, from Sendai, that's Center for Environment and Development for the Arab region and Europe. We are a new member to the plenary, and I'd like first to thank all the GEO, regional GEOs for their presentations. And I'd like to emphasize, I don't want to repeat what from the US comments. I agree 100% with these comments. And for GEO, I'd like also to emphasize the importance of including more countries in their work. We are working in and would like to partnership with them and wide network. We work in a project under the GEMS and Africa in coastal and marine of North Africa, and we have a GeoPortal, and we have a lot of data and to provide services for the countries of North Africa. So we can also open to we work together with AfriGEOs, and also we are the focal point of the North Africa in global environment outlook. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Now I invite the delegate from South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa would like to thank the African member states and the participating organization for the critical role that they played in the development of the AfriGEO Secretariat. South Africa, through the Department of Science and Innovation, would continue to support the operation of AfriGEO Secretariat, which, as you might know, is currently being hosted by the Regional Center for Mapping Resources for Development in Nairobi, Kenya. We would like to also highlight that South Africa, through the National Space Agency, has established an EO Research, Development and Innovation Fund and the Intra-Africa Space Program that will support both industry nationally and regionally in the development of Earth observation applications, products, and services. The Intra-Africa Space Program will also support research collaborations in Earth observation between South African researchers and other researchers from the AfriGEO member states, including the participating organizations. We'll also support the African Resource Management Constellation partners and the Southern African Development Community countries, SADC, and other country organizations involved in your research and development activities. We would also like to highlight that we would like to strengthen our partnership with other regional GEOs to ensure that we do develop tailor-made solutions that will respond to African challenges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There are also calling from Switzerland, Costa Rica, and Finland. Now, Switzerland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Switzerland also supports EuroGEOs strongly. We think that regional coordination and cooperation meets the user needs, is closer to the user needs. And with this regard, we want also to thank the participating organization within this regional cooperation, like ESA and EUMETSAT, for example. With this kind of cooperation with the participating organization, we are closer to the user needs, and we can go and spread out the experience that we have and the results also to the other regional cooperation, which we support also, that we have a network spread all over the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The coming next, Costa Rica.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for your presentations and for the great work that you have been doing, especially to Angelica Gutierrez, our regional coordinator for the Americas. I want to take this opportunity to ask you a question to the regional coordinators. I want to know what is your main priority for work in 2020? What is the most important thing that you wish to see accomplished by the end of the year? Thank you very much.
Is it your question to America or all?
Well, it will be interesting to see a short answer for all the regional coordinators. But
okay, in the end, they will make these comments. So let's move to Finland.
Thank you very much, Chair, and regional leaders. I'm promoting the thing that the European Union will at least have a project for Arctic geos. There are also actions starting in China. We have actions already ongoing in the US and in Canada, which are going to address this area. And I hope that we are not just sticking to certain Caucasus regions when we think about geo-action regionally, that it's very useful to be very concrete in some actions and to combine them together. And I actually hope that from all the Caucasus, because the European Caucasus will have a very big 15 million project for this, but in the others there are also actions that we could find a good way how these actions already on the day-to-day work can find action together as well, and not just single things here and there. And I do know that we have good connections for these already, but that's why the Arctic could at least have one example in this, and I hope we find other areas as well. Thank you.
Okay, as good comments, there isn't any piece of the land, the ocean should have covered with the GEO. No except. That's a very good comment. Now I think we invite our 4 representatives make some contributions to our comments or questions. Please, one by one, very short.
So, on the question on what's going to be the follow-up in 2020, as far as EuroGeo is concerned, we don't want to stay European only. Huh? We have started to collaborate with the other GEOS initiative. We had a meeting this week with the AOGEO project, and Ringfa mentioned that previously, focusing on climate adaptation. The follow-up as always is going on how to deepen our activities and collaboration in Europe so that we can integrate better the different resources for the development of those applications and products. This is really a very important objective, and we are going to continue in 2020. And as it was mentioned already by the Swiss colleague, we are aiming to bring together resources from Copernicus, from ESA, from the European Open Science Cloud, from the Joint Research Center, from universities, to create knowledge, or to make available knowledge, or to upscale knowledge. And I think it's very timely in the context of the discussion which is taking place right now on the GEOS Knowledge Hub. So we have a lot on our plate, and we have a lot to do in 2020 to deepen the activities in EuroGeo and make sure we deliver to the users.
Okay, so other influence from, yeah.
Our objective for 2020 is to strengthening the national GEOs and strengthening the partnerships, not only with national GEOs, but also with thematic GEO initiatives and flagships and participant organizations. Also to connect the GEO agendas of AmeriGeo and Global to national agendas and national funding for GEO activities.
Our priorities for 2020, one is to increase membership for GEO. We want to see especially more SADC countries getting on board. We want to strengthen coordination so that we're all working together. We want to increase resource mobilization because the regional GEO can only perform better if they have the resources to make these things work out. We want to increase the capacity for African countries to implement and undertake the activities that we want to see moving forward. We also want to champion more youth and women getting engaged in GEO. Further, we want to see implementation in the priority areas that AfriGeo follows very closely in sustainable urban development, in food security, in forestry, and water. Thank you.
Further
coming year, AOGO will try to put in action and in reality of the three integrated priority study area and pilot study. We will try to also to test the development of the inter-regional cooperation, especially for the climate change, climate adaptation. And also we will try to ask more the regional countries, organizations to be involved in the regional development and try to contribute more to the global GEO. Thank you.
Okay. All the GEO work have to carry out by our regional bodies. I think they have done good work and also give us a very good presentation about the work and the work plan in the future. Also thanks to our intervention during the discussion. Okay, thank you very much. The next item we will move for the local impact. So we will invite the next speaker to the stage, Ms. Valerie Grant, the Managing Director from Geotech Vision in Jamaica. Please. She will highlight the important role of commercial sectors to meet the local needs. Mr. Grant. Okay, you have the floor, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So mine is a pleasure to really speak to you about how we've been delivering impactful solutions locally. So you've all heard the phrase that knowledge is power, and it carries a thought that success depends much on really how much a person knows. But what we need to remember is that knowing is not understanding. And so while knowledge can be power, it has to be accompanied by some form of action. And so knowledge without action is therefore useless. So how do we build that ecosystem that really transmits the right kind of education in a clear and effective way that as it relates to geospatial and Earth observation? And how do we provide that access that is meaningful and uncomplicated in terms of providing the necessary information and data? With that kind of access and education, could it spur the entrepreneurial spirit that would result in the kind of innovation that we are looking for in our communities? Well, what we have come to realize is that there can be no true efficiencies in isolation. And so we need the village-type approach to really get this to work. It is within that context that we believe that it takes strategic partnerships, it takes experts, institutional arrangements, and an environment that will allow us to solve the big challenges. And so some of the things that we've been looking at includes disaster management, environmental management, and developmental issues. And so I'll just give you some examples of the different ones that we've been using elements of Earth observation in. So for example, we have been looking at mangrove mapping in Guyana. And so Guyana has about 285 miles of coastline that in high tide, it's below sea level. And so these coastlines are being destabilized because of the reduction of the mangroves. So what has had to happen is that there has to be a recolonization of these mangroves. And in so doing, aerial and satellite imagery was integral in both allowing to measure the baseline of what exists, as well as monitoring the progress of what was colonizing. And so it enabled the decision makers to gain new insights, to really have better economic and social environmental decision making as they went through. Another example is the whole matter of the shore zone management system. Again, along that coastline in Guyana, there is about 285 meters of seawall, sea defenses. Now, what is necessary is for the authorities to understand how it is that these sea defenses are operating. So they have what is called rangers, and these rangers, they have to go out, they have to examine. This application, using satellite imagery, coupled with other geospatial technologies, allow them to really do this from inside their offices, measuring the residual life and basically doing some elements of preventative maintenance. In Trinidad, we've been working with the land authority there, and it is allowing the farmers to better understand the kinds of issues that they're having and where lands are available. This is another application that we've been working with. Now, coral reefs monitoring, that is something that is very critical for the Caribbean, especially because the coral reefs are so integral in our tourism product. And so one of the things that the images allows us to do is to really monitor and recognize when there is pollution, when those sensitive ecosystems are being in trouble. We've also been doing a lot of baseline mapping in terms of the development and urban planning, as well as using the satellite imageries to create some land base from which we are extracting various products. One example is in Barbados when we've done that, and we're using it in environmental health department projects. Once we would have extracted the information, coupled with drone imagery as well, we also allow what one of our clients, the Ministry of Health, says is to not just do the vector control in a very sporadic way, but to be more targeted. Road safety is another initiative, and we go back to Guyana a bit, and what we've used the satellite images to really capture the information on the villages, understand what is going on, and do some time series analysis, and come up with some of the elements that could be used in terms of really heightening road safety conditions in those areas. One of the areas of development that we pay particular attention to is with Jamaica Flying Labs and Geotech Vision. We have actually been having UAV summer camps. So we've been teaching the young ones how to really use these technologies to really understand, collect data about their environment, analyze that data, and to also spread the word to their peers, to their parents, about how the capabilities of these kind of observations and how they can use it to solve some of the unique local challenges that they are having in their very communities. And through these efforts, we have seen where there are groups developing like GEO explorers and other such that are mapping their communities. This past summer, we had a camp called Fly Like a Drone, Fly Like a Girl drone camp, the sky's the limit. And this was really geared of enabling young girls to really use drone technology in solving some of the local challenges in their communities. In terms of disaster management, being in the Caribbean, then this becomes a major issue because we're constantly prone with things like hurricanes. And so in St. Martin recently, there was, well, not so recent anymore, but there was Hurricane Matthew. And Hurricane Matthew really devastated St. Martin. About 6 months after that hurricane would have passed, then we were asked, in conjunction with the World Bank, to really fly some drone images. What that did is that we were able to capture not just the extent of the damage that still exists, as well as what was rebuilt on the island, but coupled with some street view images, then you could now start to understand stability of the different structures when you looked at the three-dimensional images and some other algorithms. So those are some of the ways in which we've been using this type of technology. Recently, there was Hurricane Dorian that really devastated the Bahamas. And so having the images from the weather forecasting station was really able to tell the general population what was taking place. So again, things that the general citizenry is benefiting from. Now, in the aftermath of that hurricane, then this is an image that shows what exactly took place over Abaco in Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas after the hurricane would have passed. And so again, another area in which Earth observation is being used. So it allows us to really get a holistic view of what is going on. And so there are several different interactive online services that are being coupled and used in mashups as we create different data products to satisfy the local needs that exist. But one project that I want to take a little time to talk about is a project that really brings a community together. And the reason for that is that we always think that it's impossible until it's done. And so what we're trying to do is to develop a community of professional mappers in the Caribbean. And that is an effort that is being spearheaded by a group called the GEO group out of the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine. And they're working with several of the organizations across the Caribbean. And they're using the technology to make sure that we can accomplish some amount of rapid mapping to get the baseline information. Of course, satellite imagery is the base, and so we are extracting the fundamental types of data. So collaborations is occurring at the speed of trust in this situation. And so these are the collaborators that exist in that project. Of course, Geotech Vision is one of the commercial entities that is working closely with the project and making sure that we can use the technology that exists. The backbone for the project is the Esri technology. We are creating building footprints, road networks, extracting all of the different kinds of foundational data set for the different countries that exist, and we're making sure that there's a necessary verification and data validation that is taking place. And that is all happening all across the region, so everybody's sitting down, and this community of mappers is operating remotely, and they're taking it upon themselves to help different countries to really build out their data stock. And this is something that is not only being contributed to by academia, by volunteers, but by the commercial sector as well. So what we've come to realize is that the pillars of growth really for us in the Americas and specifically in the Caribbean is to have strategic partnerships to ensure that there is training and education and that it is customized to local needs so that it can solve the challenges that we face, as well as to make sure that we have new users that are onboarded as we go through and find applications that are fitting to the kinds of challenges that we face. We are hoping that with this, we're able to foster these kind of strategic partnerships and contribute to sustainable solutions that will give big local impact and solve regional challenges. We're hoping to develop and grow efforts to reach new users and communities, and that's one of the reasons we really focus on school-age children as well, because we recognize that they are the next generation. We want to make an impact on the SDGs and also to contribute to that. And we want to help to facilitate that increased engagement with small and medium-sized commercial organizations, hence our role in the private sector network of the UNGGIM Americas as well. And so while it is that commercial entities can play such an important role in terms of delivering the products and the services that are tailored to really meet the needs of the national and local needs, it's as important actors in this space and in creating value. We know that more can be done, and so we have been finding creative ways to try to get some of that more done, so to speak, including the involvement with the community of mappers. But a key challenge that we think that has to be addressed, and we are hoping that GEO can help to tackle, is the whole matter of empowerment of government institutions and the whole matter of financing for projects that can be piloted and scaled at the desired level to give the desired impact. And so those are our thoughts as to how we have been having local impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Very impressive work in the regional impact of GEO. Are there any comments or suggestions from the floor? Okay, let's give the floor to the United States, please.
Thank you, Chair. The United States applauds this discussion about local impacts and is really pleased that GEO is giving greater attention to Indigenous peoples and communities. And I think that the Australian host this week have really exemplified how to engage and appreciate and express your appreciation for our Earth's first observers. It's something long overdue. We commend those who have organized side events and dialogues this week with Indigenous peoples that help community capacity development and expanding their roles within the broader geospatial community. Indigenous peoples are viewed as, by the United States and others in this room, I know, as key stakeholder groups and partners in the efforts of GEO. And at this point, I'm very proud to introduce James Radlingleaf, a member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe and a member of the U.S. delegation to GEO.
Okay, thank you for comments. Next,
oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, more. Okay, go on.
Thank you, Dr. Virginia Burkett. Hihani Washte, good morning. Halbi Dakuapi, Chante Washte Napa Huzapalo. I am James Radlingleaf of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. Let me tell you a story about how we as tribes in the U.S. have combined our traditional knowledge with the geoscience, data, and technology. The American buffalo, Tatanka in our Lakota language, have sustained Native American tribes for centuries. I invite you to close your eyes and imagine 20 to 30 million buffalo in massive herds grazing across the prairie in the American West. Then, in the late 1800s, unregulated hunting decimated the buffalo. At one time, there were only a few hundred animals left. It's nearly impossible to overstate this impact. Buffalo were more than our source of food, clothing, and shelter. They were, and still are, our spiritual center. Now, open your eyes and see how we are restoring the buffalo to the land. We are working with conservationists, scientists, and elders. We use remote sensing to monitor and protect buffalo herds and their habitats. This work has just begun. As the buffalo continue to expand, their lands are threatened by habitat fragmentation and loss. The vast lands where the buffalo roamed are no longer. They are now limited into smaller areas. The ultimate goal is to have a continental scale restoration of buffalo in North America. This will require partnerships. We need to connect tribal lands, U.S. national parks, and conservationist areas. And we need the best information, the right tools. This is my first GEO conference. My eyes have been opened to the ways Earth observations can support sustainable lands. We need geoscience, data, and technology to find and connect the best practices for buffalo to live. We need Earth observations to make better decisions to protect the buffalo, to protect their lands and their habitat. We need that network to be done together. We need capacity building, we need applications of science, we need economic development to provide a prosperous tribal community. We need training for our youth, training for both our native knowledge and as well as cutting-edge scientific techniques. I have heard a lot over the past few days about sustainable development goals. The buffalo is our goal for sustainable development because as we return the buffalo to the land, their effect on the prairie ecosystem actually restores the prairie itself. I'm encouraged that combining tribal knowledge with high-tech tools will lead us forward. Satellites and ground-based observations gives us the methods we need to continue to restore these grand animals, to once again restore the buffalo, not just for us, but for future generations. We encourage GEO members, all of you, to build on this momentum. Get involved, support us, support our fellow Indigenous communities. As you leave here today, please remember this story, this keystone species that enhanced the land by bringing back native plants and restoring the fresh water. Our support of the buffalo supports ourselves and the land where we live. I have told you just one success story. It is up to you, to all of us, to create more success stories. Midakuya Oyasi, all my relations. Wopi Letanka, Ichichiapalo. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. Now I give the floor to the delegates from Greece.
Thank you, Chair. Once more, I would like to stress out the role that the national GEO nodes and GEO offices could and should play in this aspect. They can really interface in making and facilitating impact delivery more efficient, as they're well aware of both the private and the public landscapes at their own countries. Currently, to my perspective, the national loads stare either downwards to establish the links and create momentum with stakeholders, local stakeholders, or upwards at GEO and regional GEO levels to remain up to date and align with. To my opinion, what is missing is to look around and start talking also with other national offices in order to exchange good practices and coordinate their actions. So in this line, I would expect that regional GEOs could provide a frame for the initiation of such coordination between national nodes or enhanced if they are already doing so. And for example, flagship projects like the XVI project in EuroGeo to initiate and facilitate such processes. And finally, I would be very much interested to know how national nodes could actually work together with the private sector in order to enhance this local impact that we are talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. According to the time schedule, the last one give to Australia.
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping that we would have Mr. Lawford Benning, an Aboriginal leader, to present this intervention, but unfortunately he has been called away to deal with an important issue in his community. So I'm going to make his intervention and hope to do it justice. So Australia recognises the role that Indigenous Australians have played as our first Earth observers. And we've heard from Valerie about the importance of providing technologies that local communities can use and that are relevant to their challenges and priorities. I think it's also important for us to realise that we can take advantage of expert local knowledge, particularly from Indigenous communities that have a long history on the land, and learn from their perspectives and that can benefit us with providing regional and global solutions. I've mentioned this particularly in the context of the Pacific. The Pacific Island Program had a Talanoa session the other day, for example, and a Talanoa is a traditional approach to meetings that requires active listening, empathetic engagement and consensus. I think we have much to learn from the cultures of Indigenous communities globally. One of the things Lawford was planning to do, and which now falls to me, is to talk about the Indigenous hackathon that was held over the weekend in Canberra with multiple teams working on challenges that couple Earth observations with connectivity to Indigenous communities. We had a number of teams engaged and that competed in this hackathon from the Americas, from Europe and indeed Australia. And they benefited from engagement with a number of great mentors from Indigenous communities in the Amazon, in North America and in Australia. A panel of respected Indigenous elders assessed the team's outputs, and I'd like to announce that the winner of the Indigenous hackathon is Team Triton, which are a team of students from the Australian National University with an app that aims to preserve Indigenous knowledge by users adding to the database themselves. This is Indigenous communities, as well as other groups with the active consent of Indigenous communities. The database serves as a vehicle by which the intergenerational cultural experiences might be preserved. So I'd just like to announce to the plenary the winner, Team Triton. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, we are moving to the last part, which will concentrate on how to bridge Earth observation community with the end-user community. So I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rolando Ocampo, the Director of Statistics Division of Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Rolando, you have the floor, please.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation for this GEO Week 2019. And first, I would like to congratulate all the equipment that work in this meeting. It's a lot of work. It's a tremendous effort to make this GEO Week. And congratulations for all the team from Australia and from GEO. What I'm going to advance. I don't know how. I don't know how did I do. Now. What I'm going to present is how to work with the key enabling communities to help drive the engagement priorities and other key actions areas for GEO. And the things that I'm going to discuss is first, and to focus on the official statistics community and the ecosystems accounting. In terms of official statistics community, so as you know, for the following of in focusing in the Sustainable Development Goals, so the working group for the interagency that was created in the interagency expert group that has to be with the geospatial information has a task team that introduce the use of satellite imagery, in particular for 6 indicators. 6.3.1, that wastewater management, 6.3.2, ambient water quality, 6.6.6.1, special extent of water-related ecosystems. And all this information is, the countries are using Earth observations and working together with the geospatial agencies in their countries and for the initiative of Earth observation for the Sustainable Development Goals. The other 3 are as the 9.1 rural population within 2 kilometers distance from all season road, the 11.3.1 land consumption per population growth, and proportion of the degraded land per total land. And again, the agencies that are responsible for the following and the countries are working with the Earth Observation Initiative to use this Earth observation and try to incorporate this information into the following of these indicators. And let me move to the regional side, for in particular, the one that I come from, ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And in the countries in that region pressed in 2016 just to incorporate a resolution in the 36th period of session of ECLAC trying to involve in the Statistical Commission of the Americas the participation of geospatial information in particular for the following of the Sustainable Development Goals. Since then, in 2017, they have their first meeting in the Statistical Commission Executive Committee and the Executive Committee of UNGGIM Americas, try to involve the work and to link and strengthening the relationship in the countries for the geospatial agencies and the statistical agencies. And this is I want to mention the participation from Nicholas Davis that mentioned in the morning, so the importance of the partnership. So the partnership in between Earth observation, geospatial agencies in the countries, and a statistical community in the countries is very important for the following of the indicators, and in particular for another issue that the director of GEO mentioned in terms of socioeconomic, to incorporate socioeconomic data to the Earth observations. So we continue working in 2018, in particular in the Latin American countries Forum for Sustainable Development, where they present the advances of the Sustainable Development Goals. So they have a seminar for the integration of the statistical and geospatial information using Earth observations. And this year, in 2019, in October, we have a meeting for the the director for the Statistics Commission for the America and UNGGIM Americas in Mexico City. And in a few weeks, at the end of the month, we are going to have a joint session for the UNGGIM Americas in the Statistical Commission of the Americas. In this session, so the co-chairs of the America GEO are invited to assist. The session is going to be held in Santiago de Chile from 19 to 21 of this month. Some other works that the community are working on is this one in particular, the one that we call in the Americas MEGA, is the Statistical Geospatial Framework for the Americas. So we have a platform, a geographical portal that with data that is going to be openly accessible, and the idea is to incorporate the statistical information to the units of small geographical areas. So this is going to be presented during the Statistical Commission for the Americas. Another one is the project that we launched in the region for the Caribbean project, is land cover and satellite imagery provision. We gave capacity training for the countries from the Caribbean countries, and we involved national experts in capacity building activities and technology transfer. In terms of for the region in the national aspects, so since 2017, ECLAC has an expert, a regional expert in geospatial information, and his work is been conducted to go to the countries and give capacity training to involve in these countries, try to involve the geospatial agencies and the statistical agencies just to learn the way that they are working with all the standards that have been provided from the Statistical Commission at UNSD and the UNGGIM at a global level. Another example that for the use of Earth observations is the one that Mexico is conducting for their Open Data Cube to produce some indicators, in particular for proportion land that are degraded to the indicator 2.4.1 and another ones that are working in the country. Let me move to the ecosystem accounting, which is a very important aspect that we are trying to impulse in ECLAC. And as you know, the Statistics Division for the United Nations Environment Program, the Secretariat of the Convention for the Biological Diversity, and the European Union launched the project Natural Capital Accounting and Valuation of Ecosystem Services. And their main goal is that to ensure to 2020, at least 100 countries have implemented the economic and environmental economic and accounting programs, and 50 of them incorporate two ecosystems accounts. In this project, we are working very aligned with the initiative of the Earth Observation for Ecosystem Account. In particular, we are working in some deliverables that they are supporting us. First of one is review and contribute to the development of methods and standards, test and apply of Earth observation data and algorithms for the purpose of ecosystem accounting, to develop data platforms and resources to amplify our results and facilitate ecosystem accounting at a scale. We are working together with this initiative to produce and to help this initiative to find their goal at the 2020 year. So in the region, we have some progress. The countries in blue are the ones that are working in the development of environmental accounts. The green ones is the countries that manifest that they are interested in to have these economic accounts, and the orange one are the ones that are they don't have any disposable information about it. In terms of countries, also we, as you can see, Colombia is working in this work, in particular in water, energy, and emission accounts, in forest account, and the work available by the type of forest, and they are working on the green growth strategy indicators for the OECD Sustainable Development Indicators. In Costa Rica, so they are working in water accounts, in forest accounts too. And in particular, for the natural capital accounting and valuation, Brazil is working in Mexico, are working. This Brazil and Mexico are the two pilots for this project in the Americas. Brazil is working in soil laws and water regulation. Mexico is launching a pilot study in the state of Aguascalientes, and again, in his study, a national level extension accounts that includes balances and exchange matrix condition. There are some slides about the advances that they are doing, and this is a slide from IBG from Brazil. The one that is that they are working in Mexico, in particular, this is the state of Aguascalientes. And this is a formula that they are, Mexico is working in the economic valuation, with an economic valuation purposes, so services that an ecosystem provides, in particular for crop production. So finally, how do we move forward to achieve a sustainable engagement of these key and other relevant enabled communities? So what we think is at the national level and even at the regional level, the most important thing is to strengthening national governance to the link the geospatial, earth observation, and statistical community with the agencies in charge of the implementation of the 2030 agenda. That's what we are doing and trying to do is and to improve at ECLAC with these regional meetings, incorporating UNGGIM and the Statistics Commission, promoting alliance and partnerships with the academy and research centers, in particular with Earth observations, dissemination and development and capacity of methods and tools for the use and processing of Earth observation. And at the regional level, so regional coordination and development of joint roadmaps between the agencies and geospatial, statistical, and Earth observation initiatives. That's what we want to, and so the co-chairs from the AmeriGeos are invited for this meeting in November, at the end of November in Santiago de Chile, to exchange good practices on the use of geospatial, statistical, and Earth observation information, and to improvement of the tools of dissemination for the Sustainable Development Goals. With that, I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rolando. Are there any comments? Okay, give the floor to Australia first.
How unusual. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce John Shepherd from the Australian Bureau of Statistics to make our intervention.
Great, thanks Stuart, and thank you Rolando for your presentation, and Chair for the opportunity to speak to this GEO plenary today. I'd like to just firstly recognise that having a representative of the statistical community speak at the GEO plenary represents a clear milestone for both our communities, and it reflects the good work over recent years at the international, regional and national levels to increase the collaboration between statistical and geospatial organisations and communities who share a common role in providing information to governments, business and citizens to support sustainable development goals. There are clear mutual benefits for the statistical and Earth observation communities to work even more closely together. Although the appetite for data and indeed statistics is growing, we're finding that traditional census and survey-based approaches are being challenged by declining response rates. And with the added pressure of declining resources in most of our statistical agencies, it's imperative that alternate data sources are used to supplement this statistical information where possible. Earth observation data is one alternate data source which has huge potential to produce responsive, consistent and repeatable statistical information at detailed geographical levels across our country, continent and even globally. For the Earth observation community, the challenge is there to create consistent, repeatable, national-scale products that will be able to feed into this statistical production system. And this includes having consistent input data sources and image processing to produce products that enable comparison of results across geographies and over time, as well as an ability to understand and measure the degree of error in classifications in order to provide a measurement of accuracy of the stats products that we derive from that Earth observation data. But in return, statistical agencies have plenty they can give back. We hold detailed information from current and historical data collection activities. The broad national coverage of this information makes it a valuable source of field observations that can be used as training data to develop algorithms and derive national data sets from the raw Earth observation data. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics is already collaborating here in Australia with Geoscience Australia in this regard. In future, survey data could be targeted to specific commodities and locations to help maintain these algorithms. Finding ways to address legislative constraints and community expectations around use of this data to make this information available to Earth observation communities is an important area where statistical communities can support the development of the Earth observation-derived products. The questions that statistics are informing are becoming increasingly complex. There's an even greater demand to understand how our physical environment is interacting with society and the economy, which have been more traditional domains of statisticians. Often the best way to answer these questions is to combine Earth observation data on the physical environment with statistical administrative information about our society or economy. However, to combine these in an effective way, there needs to be consistent statistical geospatial frameworks that enable streamlined integration of data from these different domains. The Global Statistical Geospatial Framework has been developed through both the geospatial and statistical communities within the UN system and will be important in bringing together both information and communities from the Earth observation and statistical domains. While there are great opportunities to work even more closely together, it's important we do this in an efficient way to ensure the best expertise is prioritised and applied to issues that are of mutual benefit to both communities. So to this end, the Australian Bureau of Statistics strongly supports the need to streamline the number, governance and working processes of the groups where Earth observation and statistics communities interact under the UN system, where bodies such as GEO, UNSC and UNGGIM will need to actively coordinate their activities to ensure we're most focused and efficient in those mechanisms. was very evident at our side event on Tuesday is that what was very evident was that our communities are very keen to collaborate to maximise the benefits to our collective goals. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Now to give the floor to China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Rolando. We think Enabling Communities Institute has been always an important target of GEO. And we think the great progress has been achieved. It should be noted that current participants come from the suppliers of Earth observation data, software applications, together with consumers of government organizations. Concerning investment on digital economy, it's the theme of GEO Week this year. Engaging and enabling participants of the demand of GEOs is far from meeting requirement of internet users. We can take internet users as an example. Therefore, an important action would be to attract internet users into GEO either. Support individual decision-making. The general internet users like mobile internet, like artificial intelligence, smart roads, the digital twin of city, they want the GEOs to be able to provide a service of reliable, one-click, continuous, and real-time information through apps. They do not want to face the scenarios of numbers of results from different experts using similar shared resources like images and datasets. To fulfill this bridge between Earth observation systems and 40 billion websites as consumers, need we GEOs provide trusted result and on-demand service, including about the statistical issues, ecosystem accounting. We think this is a valuable and necessary step for GEOs to integrate with digital economy. Next week, China Meteorological Satellite Fengyun will hold a forum in Hainan. We hope we can take some text example for apply the GEOs to like the investment on digital economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Now give the floor to Giant.
Thank you, Chair. Ronaldo, and to the plenary for this opportunity to make this intervention. Giant is proud of the contribution that we make to GEO. Together, we are able to implement the latest global communication infrastructure and services to help researchers collaborate with their peers wherever they are in the world in support of the GEO work programme. Without the National Research and Education Networks, or NRENs, who work together in a non-competitive way, the level of sharing geospatial data and research would be significantly lower. For example, Giant and the European NRENs provide the link to the ESA Copernicus data center, where the rest of the world retrieves the data from. So far, around 65 petabytes of this year has been downloaded from the global the global Earth observation community. Giant also works with EUMETSAT to distribute the Earth observation data by providing the terrestrial version of the EUMETCAST system. The epoch of big data would not be possible without the communications infrastructure and services in place to support the current level of data acquired from researchers around the world. Giant sits at the heart of this global infrastructure, representing 43 national European research and education networks with a communications infrastructure connecting over 100 countries and regions. Giant has developed many services to support science and research, such as the free Wi-Fi service Eduroam, or the global single sign-on solution for research institutions called EduGain. However, as science advances, the services that support research must also evolve to meet not just the challenges of today, but the future requirements as well. Giant is meeting those challenges by developing new services, such as EduTeams, which enable the creation of virtual communities by providing an authentication and authorization infrastructure for community services. Researchers from universities and institutions can now share access to digital resources with citizen scientists and industry experts at the same time, accelerating the possibilities that specialist collaboration will provide. Earlier this year, Giant ran a pilot with NextGeos to implement EduTeams. Through this joint effort, Next, GEOS will be able to manage the use of institution credentials from hundreds of research and development institutions around the world, such as universities or research centres, and provide access to its core services. Through this collaboration and the use of the connection to EduGain, the next GEOS Data Hub expands the reach of the R&E communities worldwide. The collaboration demonstrates the mutual benefits of EduGain for research and education communities, fostering growth and access to Earth observation data. And GEON continues to support GEO through the work it performs in the community task Advancing Communication Networks with our African partners via the EC-funded Africa Connect 2 project. And GEON is also pleased to welcome our Latin American partners, Red Clara, in joining the community at this plenary. Together, we are working to establish a new fiber optic cable to connect Europe to Latin America to distribute Copernicus data to the region. We are excited for this future and the possibilities resulting from being part of the work that GEO performs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. According to the time, I'll give the floor to CEOs and Conservation International. Please, in briefing very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, on behalf of CEOs, I compliment GEO to have extremely valuable discussions on impact of GEO at various scales. CEOs fully endorse the work to be done at local, regional, national, and cooperation for global GEO to study various societal impacts and meaningful actions for decision making. As informed yesterday by UNESCAPE, some of the local level issues such as losses due to droughts and floods are very, very important issues. We are observing that even though at many places a lot of water is available, but we have to tap these important resources through water harvesting at very best practices. Engaging the research community in hand-to-hand with the users and other participating organizations for such activity has to be highly useful through utilization of space-borne data, ARD, geospatial tools, and capacity building. In addition to coordination of agencies, over the number of years now, we have created a number of groups that are building bridges to downstream user community in some key applications areas. In this role, CEOS has contributed significantly for such flagship initiatives like GEO, GeoFOI, GeoGLAM, and developed use of Earth observation in general in others such as disaster and climate. Over the past several years, analysis-ready data has been a major force for CEOS. Analysis for the land under development for 3 years is now moving to implementation phase. And we are also investigating whether this approach is also applicable to other data sets, for example, LIDAR, and most importantly for coastal regions, which is becoming extremely important due to climate change. So further, the growth of ARD dataset indicates an emerging challenge for the international community, that is how to coordinate the sustained storage and management of our expanding global data collections. These thought processes would undoubtedly benefit from the participation of broader GEO community and from leadership from within the GEO. CEOS has already initiated side event Big Data, which is taking place. We'll explore some of these questions. In addition, as the CEOS chair, we have identified several themes which we are discussing within this year itself, and concrete realizations are planned also to roll out additional data cube infrastructure like BIMSTEC region. This will hold some direct benefit for the Asia Oceanic Regional GEO, AOGEO also. In addition to that, one more important issue is the renewable energy resource, which will be highly useful in coming years due to requirements of clean energy and reducing fossil fuels. With so much work to be done, CEOS remains fully engaged as the space arm of GEO and looks forward to continuing and reinforcing our support to GEO. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Last one to give to the Conservative International for very short.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to reflect on key portions of the excellent statement prepared by the GEO Secretariat on broadening the impact of Earth observations through GEO, and the excellent framing by Dr. Ocampo with the experiences at ECLOC. So, ecosystem accounting translates natural capital and ecosystem services into the language of national statistics, and in doing so provides a better understanding of the interactions between the natural environment and the economy. As Dr. Ocampo alluded, it is the goal of ecosystem accounting for the value of ecosystems to be incorporated into conventional economic measures, hopefully enabling an important systems level shift in our policy and decision making to achieve the SDGs. The United Nations-led revision of the SIA ecosystem accounts will be completed by the end of 2020 with the aim of being an international statistical standard by 2021. As countries and the ecosystem accounting development community gears up for that, we need to anticipate the subsequent demand for ecosystem accounting and the structures needed to put ecosystem accounting into place. The question for us is what we can do to not only support, but accelerate the rapid deployment of ecosystem accounting. As is the theme of this session, this is the task for many communities to work together, governments, academic institutions, intergovernmental organizations, and NGOs. Earth observation provides the foundation to systematically and repeatedly track the stocks and flows of natural capital and their contribution to people and the economies, and thus GEO plays a major role in this effort. The purpose of Earth Observation for Ecosystem Accounting initiative is to further the development and the use of Earth observation for natural capital accounting consistent with the set of standards and guidelines put forward by the UN SIA, and specifically for the ecosystem accounts. It is the task of EO for EA to document, pioneer, develop, and test the methods, tools, and platforms for account-ready data that will allow Earth observation technology to more effectively enable the widespread adoption of ecosystem accounting. The EO for EA initiative exists to bridge that gap mentioned in the statement and connect the Earth observation community with the ecosystem accounting community. And we want to take the opportunity to thank the US government for the support to the Secretariat of EO for EA. As organizations like the Global Environment Facility are already supporting governments in their efforts to mainstream nature into decision-making through natural capital accounting programs, countries like Liberia are approaching this strategically. Liberia, with the support of NASA and Conservation International, are developing SIA-compliant, Earth observation-derived ecosystem extent maps so that the GEF-funded program can seamlessly pick up on that product and move directly into ecosystem services account development and to focus on applying the information to decisions and policy. EO for EA looks forward to playing a role to better link providers, users, platforms, plans, and funding mechanisms in similar ways so that GEO can play a key role in developing the Earth observation basis for mainstreaming nature into decision-making processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I give the floor to Michiko.
Thank you, Chair. Mexico appreciates the participation of ECLAC in this plenary and its commitment with the integration of statistical and geospatial communities. Mexico also recognizes ECLAC's strong commitment to provide technical assistance in the region. The promotion that ECLAC has done of frameworks like the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework and the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework have enhanced the integration capacity in the region. We look forward to the meeting in Santiago, which will bring the mapping agencies and the national statistical offices of the region together for the second time in the last 6 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There are still several calling. I think we can postpone in the afternoon to make more interventions. Are there any comments from Rolando? Mo? No? Okay, let's give thanks to Rolando. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we close this session, I'll ask the Secretariat, Ramaj, to give a very briefing about what we have achieved this morning.
Okay. Hello, everybody. First piece of news, just before I say, is we have the figures in for the week, and it's 1,500 is the official figure for the whole week, so it's pretty stunning. I did want to go through, I did want to try and do this in one slide, but it's impossible. So I'm trying to do one slide quickly on each one. So for economic impact, Nicholas Davis talked a lot about the partnerships, talked about delivering, amplifying and sustaining partnerships. There were some significant figures that were mentioned. We talked about the 900 million potential savings through Digital Earth Africa. We talked about the billions globally using the APEC example here. And we talked about, Gilberto talked about, socioeconomic data and other data types being integrated with Earth observations and us considering impact assessments. And I've left up the quote from Nick about GEO is making the fourth industrial revolution real and inclusive. So just the green arrow, the green button? Okay.
Oh, so fast.
So then we had the examples of regional impact from the four regional GEOs. So the word partnership came up a lot. Everyone talked a lot about working across national GEOs as well as collaboration across regional GEOs. There was examples of work in East Africa looking at market price, disaster management, pest control, and other areas through GeoGlam. Actually, can this go back a slide? Can someone put it back a slide? Yeah, thank you. So there was a work on GeoGlam that was presented by Phoebe. Then there was the work looking at open data policy in national agendas that Angelica talked about. She talked about 19 different efforts connected to the eMeriGeos platform. And then Ching Fa talked a lot about regional geo collaboration, the growth and the development of AOGEO, the workshops and the symposium. And also, he talked about the 90 young scholars from 14 countries who had come in. Then there was an impressive video on the global issue of wildfires, and again talking about working not just in Europe with the JRC and with ESA and others, but also working outside of Europe with other regional GEOs. So the example of the collaboration with AOGEO came up. Can you do the next one for me, please? So this was some of the responses to the questions that came in from the floor, just talking about some of the priorities and some of the things that the regional GEOs were going to do. I just highlight the one from AfriGeo about bringing in new members, which I think all regions are trying to do, increasing capacity development, and the term resource mobilization was used, but it's too long for my slide. So funding as well is what I put in. And notably the point about youth and women engagement. So, and then the final one for AOGEO, they talked about the integrated priority as a study, and again, this work across the regional GEOs. Next one, please. So for Valerie, she talked about this concept of meaningful access to knowledge. So she talked about education, data access, and innovation. She gave us a lot of examples of countries: Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Martin, Bahamas. And then she talked about fly like a girl, the example of the drones. And then this aspect of communication to local population. And she talked about the community of mappers, bringing in some of the work of UNGGIM, the private sector network, and talking about how they want to develop their work around the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Next one, please. And then finally, obviously because I was doing these while people were still making interventions, I had to send them off. So I didn't cover all the discussion, but we talked a lot about the indicator development work on SDG 6, 9, 11, 15, a lot of work that's developed through the joint work of UNGGIM with ECLAC. GEO has also been tracking a lot of this work since the debut of UNGGIM. And then Rolando talked about work in different regions, about the fact that they now have dedicated geospatial experts in ECLAC working across the region. He particularly mentioned a number of countries, and one of the projects was in the Caribbean. And then I think just like everyone, he talked about national and regional strengthening. The final point is just, I mean, there was an intervention there from Conservation International about ecosystem accounting, and that was a significant point also raised by Rolando about aligning efforts that are already going internationally. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. According to the time, we'll have a break, short break. We'll begin the next, will be 11:45. So we'll have a break. You know, GEO activities we have seen is very fruitful at the global level, regional level, and the local level. So after that, we'll have the move to another session after coffee break. Okay, let's have coffee break. Enjoy your coffee, please.